Namaskar friends. Two features have come to define Pakistan. One, an obsessive quest for parity with India, and two, the Islamization of Pakistan and its attendant consequences. Today, let me talk about the Islamization of Pakistan, a phenomena that has reshaped Pakistani politics, society, and state identity, and has created a national psyche conditioned by religious extremism and sectarian violence. I am Tilak Devasher, and you are watching The Great Game Reloaded. Today I am joined by my colleague Ishan Prakash. He is a journalist with ANI, and we'll be talking about Islamization. Thank you, Ishan.
I'm here just to try and extract as much information as I can from you. You're a repository of information on Pakistan, and I think everyone will be better served when I try and extract as much as I can from here. So the topic today is about Islamization of Pakistan and how it's seeped into sort of all facets of Pakistani society. Can you dive a little bit into the history of all of this?
Yeah. So, Pakistan had come into being in the name of Islam, and it described itself as Mamlakat-e-Khudadad, that is a divinely granted country. Jinnah had demanded a separate homeland for the Muslims so that they could practice Islam free from the Hindu majority. His successors incrementally added to the trajectory of Islamization. Today, there is a situation where one sect of Islam is almost at war with another. How did a country want to protect Muslim rights become a hostage to sectarian violence, religious extremism, and institutional orthodoxy? In fact, General Musharraf put it really well when he asked, "We were once a perfectly normal, religiously harmonious society with only occasional tension between the Sunni and Shia sects of our religion. How did we reach the present-day epidemic of terrorism and extremism?"
So now, from what I read from your books and essentially what reading is out there about Pakistan, Jinnah appears to be pretty secular in his own personal life over there. And from the initial days of the formation of Pakistan, it seemed as if he didn't want Pakistan to move towards a trajectory that was not secular. Am I reading this correctly?
Actually, the difference is he was secular in his personal life, but not in his public life. You see, in his public life, it was Jinnah who sanctioned the use of religion in the 1945-46 elections. Because he was allergic to mass mobilization, he didn't agree with Gandhiji on that. He did not want land reforms. So how do you attract attention or support for the Muslim League? He sanctioned religion. And the slogan in the elections was, "Pakistan ka matlab kya?" And the answer was the kalma. And then even his dress changed into a more Islamic, wearing that takul cap and that achkan and things. Before that, he was wearing always extremely well-tailored suits and ties.
Yes.
So his personal life didn't really matter. It was his public persona which mattered. And because you put the religious genie out, you couldn't put it back. So even though his famous speech of 11th of August, where he says you're free to go to your temples, you're free to go to your mosques, the state will have nothing to do with religion.
Right.
But it was not very effective. With one speech, you cannot overturn all that has been happening over the last many years. And within 2 years of his death, the objective resolution was introduced in the Constituent Assembly, which laid down that sovereignty belongs to Allah and the Muslims will be guided by Islamic rules.
So you saw a little bit of secularism in Jinnah's utterances, where he didn't outrightly condemn, other minority religions out there, or didn't actively sort of seek their sort of condemnation, or what led to the rapid sort of ratcheting up of radicalism that seeped into Pakistani society? If you can give me a timeline of all the sort of dictators that came after him and embraced this growing sense of radicalism.
You see, the first and most important was the objective resolution, which laid down the meaning or the purpose of the creation of Pakistan. Now that preamble is part of all constitutions thereafter, which says that Islam will be the guiding principle for, so that is there. Then you had these anti-Ahmadiyya riots in Lahore in 53. And there was this very famous commission called the Munir Commission, which was set up. And the Munir Commission, actually, it's a fantastic document, probably the best document to come out of Pakistan. And it mentioned that they asked for 14, 15 people of different sects that you say that Ahmadiyya should be declared non-Muslim. Therefore, you must first know who is a Muslim. Only then, by that standard, Ahmadiyyas are non-Muslims. And they write in the report that, much to our regret, none of those 14 ulama could agree on the definition of a Muslim. So if they agreed to one definition, they went out of the pale of Islam for the 13 others. So that was already there in 53, 54. You know, this kind of sectarianism and differences were already there. Then in 74, Bhutto declares the Ahmadiyyas as non-Muslims. You know, constitutionally he tried to disenfranchise a section of the society. But the person who really made the difference was Zia-ul-Haq.
So it reached its pinnacle with Zia-ul-Haq.
Yeah, and his reforms and what he did, what he thought he was doing reforms. And then followed immediately by the Soviet Jihad.
Right.
So whatever the groundwork that he had prepared became operationalized as a result of the Soviet Jihad.
And when the Soviets eventually did fall in Afghanistan, was this like considered an affirmation of the policies of Zia-ul-Haq and his embracing political Islam?
Yeah, it was seen as a victory for jihad, that they had brought down a superpower by jihad. And you see, the biggest thing that the Soviet Jihad did, it sanctifies the use of violence for the sake of Islam.
A means to end.
Yeah.
Yes.
That jihad is justified. So that seeped into society.
Right.
It seeped into politics. And the next phase of that was jihad in Kashmir.
So Tilak sir, you had said essentially that it reached its pinnacle with Zia-ul-Haq, pardon me. But how did he codify all of this, his thinking, into sort of law or essentially all the administrative structures in Pakistan at the time?
So, you know, after he toppled Bhutto in 77, his radical and comprehensive Islamization program was Sharia benches were established in courts, Hudud ordinances were introduced, compulsory zakat and ushr was implemented, education was Islamized, blasphemy laws were strengthened with the death penalty. Now, in effect, Zia didn't Islamize laws, he Islamized society. From textbooks to television, every tool of the state was used to Islamize society and reshape Pakistani identity. The consequences were long-term, structural and deeply corrosive. Because his measures had a deleterious impact on the status of women and on minorities. Equally, it would impact generations of children through Islamization of the curricula and inject the poison of sectarianism into society. In fact, he gave instructions to the textbook boards that the curriculum should be such as it would lead to an Islamized society.
Wow. So complete capture of hearts and minds in a way.
Absolutely, forcibly. You know, so if you start teaching children at the age of 5 that Pakistan is an Islamic state and this is what needs to be done, so all the authors started writing textbooks to Islamize Pakistan. If you compare, people have compared the textbooks pre-77 and post-77 when Zia started this, the world of difference. Pre-77 textbooks even talked about Ramayana and Mahabharata, talked about Congress, talked about Gandhiji and Nehru. Post this 77, the Hindus were treated as enemies. There's a world of difference. And that's how he impacted the mindset of generations of children.
And he got, I don't want to say credibility, but I guess affirmation from the West as well, because they are seeing the Soviets sort of crumble as well. So his ideology at home was in a way supported by sort of the American sort of 2 thumbs up for the Pakistani way of life at that time.
You know, once he had prepared the ground with this kind of thing, and then the Soviets invaded in 79, December 79, and the Americans realized they would need Pakistan to, they found that this is a good opportunity for us to get back on the Soviet Union, what they did to us in Vietnam. And the ground was ready. They and Saudi Arabia funded madrasas, the products of which were ready to go into jihad. And this is what they needed. They needed men to go and fight against the Soviet Union. So this is where Zia's Islamization and the Soviet Jihad meshed into each other.
And the foundation was laid.
And the foundation, and it led to the creation of a society, what's being called the Kalashnikov culture, drugs, refugees, a militarized clergy, impact of the clergy. All this is as a result of that. So Zia laid the foundation, operationalized by the Soviet Jihad, and the net result is what we see in Pakistan today.
So fast forward now, we're at the late 80s. The Soviets are pulling out of Afghanistan. Do the jihadis just throw down their gun and embrace society and embrace democratic principles? Or what happens next?
That's in an ideal world. He shifted them to Kashmir.
Yeah.
You see, the Kashmir thing really blew up, if you recall, in 89-90. So all these trained jihadis, grouped into various tanzeems, were told left, nahi, right. So instead of going to Afghanistan, they went into Kashmir. The same ideology, that Islam justifies violence, jihad is justified, and you are carrying out jihad and all the attendant consequences, that you will get Jinnah and you will get this. So once this religious genie, in fact, starting from the 46 elections, once the religious genie was out, it's a direct line, you have the consequences till today.
So Tilak sir, we know what Kashmir has faced. We know what India has been facing since that negative energy was directed towards our shores. Now, what happened in Pakistani society? There are a number of sects out there, Muslim sects that are prevalent over there. That radicalism, was it also imbibed by these sects, or were they seen as alien to the dominant sort of Sunni sect that is in Pakistan?
No, today the Tehrik-i-Taliban Pakistan is as Sunni Hanafi as anybody else. And they have picked up arms against the Pakistani state. In fact, the Nur Wali Masood, who is the head of the TTP, says that we were taught jihad by Pakistani ulamas during the Soviet times.
Yes.
And we are doing jihad in Pakistan. What's wrong?
Right.
So, they have now turned inwards.
So the guns have turned inwards.
The guns have turned inwards.
Right.
And they are now reaping the what they have sown.
Is this something that we saw with the slaying of Salman Taseer? Was this an example of the blasphemy laws?
Yeah, so that blasphemy is separate. You see,
yeah.
this was the jihadi concept, but Zia, as I mentioned, gave the death penalty for blasphemy. So, and this has strengthened an organization like Tehrik-i-Taliban Pakistan, which is focused on anyone does something. In fact, many times it is to settle disputes or to land this thing. But you will find that it's the minorities who have suffered inordinately compared to their population. Only about 4% of the population, but over 50-60% of the cases, blasphemy cases, are against the minorities because they're not in a position to protest.
This is my confusion over here, the contradiction. So they are active, they are out there, but they don't seem to win any political seats. How do you reconcile that?
You see, there are two things. One, power comes from being in the National Assembly, political parties.
Yeah.
The other is power of the street.
Yeah.
Now, organizations like the TLP or Jamaat-ul-Ulama Islam or Jamaat-e-Islami, they control the streets. They are far more powerful than being in the National Assembly. People don't vote for them. That's a different matter. But for example, a bill was passed in the Punjab Provincial Assembly. The TLP and other parties got against it. The government had to, a sovereign assembly had to withdraw that bill, even though it was passed. Because these guys are protesting, you can't do it, we'll come and burn you down.
Wow.
So they actually control the streets. They in fact impact democracy far more seriously than any legislative majority.
So these organizations are not interested in the democratic process
No,
because
no.
they already have control in a way.
They think democracy is haram. They all have their Amirul Momineen, they all have their leaders. And elections, even Zia said, elections are not a concept alien to Islam.
Yes. So, this radicalism, see the genesis of this, it comes from sort of this radical Wahhabis in Saudi Arabia, that it all sort of comes from there. I've always been curious, what do the Saudis think of all these sort of radical elements that are there in Pakistan?
They don't, they use very
Colorful
a
language.
colorful language for all subcontinental Muslims. They think they're all involved in innovation, which is called bid'ah. They all are not true Muslims. In fact, they don't even consider the Taliban to be true Muslims because Taliban don't know Arabic. You know, when this Bamiyan Buddhas thing came up, so there was a delegation from Al-Azhar University which came to talk to the Taliban. They don't do this. And they said they were shocked that these guys didn't know Arabic. They had not read the Quran in its original format. So, you know, one thing is knowing a language. Second thing is living that language. You know, the sensibilities. If a phrase may mean one thing mechanically, but it will mean quite different in terms when you understand the ethos of the people. And they said these guys don't know anything. Taliban think हमारे जैसे बड़ा मुसलमान तो कोई है ही नहीं.
Yeah.
You know? So similarly in the case of Pakistan, Pakistanis think they'll be the last Muslim left standing. But the real original treat them as, you know, low level converts.
Yeah.
And involved in all
So
kinds
this
of things.
claim of commonality of religion between this and a link of cultures, etc., is it far-fetched that the Pakistanis do?
Well, look at the OIC. It is so bitterly divided. Look at now. Iran asked for help from all the Muslim countries.
Right.
Who came forward? Nobody.
Zilch.
Nobody has come forward. So, you know, it's good politics. It's good to project strength for the Western world is concerned. But to themselves, if they were one, if they were united, why would there be so many Islamic countries on the Arabian Peninsula? Ethnically, they're the same. They're Arabs. They're all Sunni Muslims, except barring few exceptions. But they are all divided into different states.
Zooming into current day Pakistan, and we saw sort of the utterances of Asim Munir and all that, and he brings religion into play, but our Hinduism in India, etc., how this is a war against all of that in a way. I'm paraphrasing. Where do you see Pakistan right now? Do you see an even tighter embrace of this radicalism that's been laid down now through decades? Or do you see a bit of more loosening up now and more embracing other...
Unlikely. You see, even today, there is government support to these radical elements. Recently you saw that big meeting that was held with Lashkar and Jaish and other people were there, and the Speaker of the Punjab Assembly was there. For the funeral of this terrorist who died, you had army generals leading there, and the person leading the prayer is also a US designated terrorist. And the army supporting it gave, you know, by the very presence, they were showing their support. So this is not going to, now, you know, these religiosity and Islamization. Religiosity is one thing, but Islamization and fundamentalism is so different, it seeped so much into society. I'll give you one example. It's a bit of a horrific example, but in district Okada in 2015 or 2016, I think it was, there was a congregation and the Maulana asked a question, and this poor 15-year-old boy, he raised his hand because he misunderstood the question. And the Maulana pounced on him and the congregation pounced on him saying, "You have committed blasphemy." The boy was so mortified that he went into a neighboring field and using a fodder cutting machine, he cut off his hand.
Wow.
And came back and presented his hand on a plate to the Maulana, and the Maulana and the congregation cheered. Now, one of the prominent English dailies commented editorially that if a person can do this to himself,
Mutilation.
to show that he is a believer, can you imagine what he will do to others? Just to attain the status of a believer. So that is the kind of radicalization and fundamentalism that has now seeped into Pakistan. At least in the immediate and medium term, there is no way this can be pulled back. It's going to become worse. Especially if you have an army chief who is a Hafizul Quran, which is a very good thing. But then if he uses it in every speech,
He legitimizes violence also.
legitimate violences that, you know, Hindus, Muslims,
Yes.
and all those kinds of things, then what is the message that you have support? So it's not going to happen. It's not going to. This is Pakistan is heading right now on a one-way street, which is going nowhere.
Tilak sir, we will pause here because I will again pick your brain for the next topic. But for now, thank you.
Thank you so much, Ishan, for joining me, and it was a real pleasure
Pleasure's mine.
talking to you. Thank you for watching. Do like, share, and comment. See you again soon with another topic and another anecdote. Until then, I am Tilak Devasher. Namaskar and Jai Hind.